Tonight, we are going to Rome. Not the museums, not the ruins that tourists photograph in summer. The actual Rome. The machine, the empire. The most formidable military organization the ancient world ever produced. And we are going to find out exactly how long you would last inside it. If you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel is built for nights exactly like this one. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. Get comfortable. Pull the covers up. Let's begin. You have joined the Roman army. Take a moment to appreciate what that sentence means before we get into the specifics of why it is going to be a problem for you. The Roman legions were not simply a military force. They were the most sophisticated, most disciplined, most systematically brutal fighting organization that the ancient world produced. For roughly 600 years, from the Middle Republic through the High Empire, the Roman army transformed a city-state on the Tiber into a power that controlled most of the known Western world and held it through a combination of superior tactics, superior engineering, superior logistics, and the systematic application of violence at a scale and efficiency that no contemporary power could match. The army that did this was built on its soldiers, not on generals, not on technology, not on any single tactical innovation, though all of these mattered, but on the individual Roman soldier, the legionary, and what he was expected to do and endure as a matter of daily routine. You are about to become one of them. Specifically, you are a legionary in the Roman army around the time of the late Republic or early Empire. Let us say the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD, the period of greatest military expansion and the era when the Roman soldier reached his most developed and demanding form. You have enlisted, which means you have signed up for a term of 25 years, not a misprint. 25 years. The daily reality of that commitment is what this video is about. We will follow you through a typical day in the legionary's life, not a battle day, not a triumph day, but an ordinary day of the kind that made up the vast majority of a soldier's service. The march, the camp, the training, the food, the punishment, the sleep. By the end of it, you will understand why the Roman army produced what it produced, and you will understand with equal clarity why you personally would not have survived it. Not because you are weak. You are not weak. Because the Roman army had a very specific, very demanding definition of adequate, and almost nobody born in the modern world meets it on day one. Let us begin. You need to understand what you have signed. The Roman military oath, the sacramentum, was not a formality. It was one of the most legally and spiritually binding commitments available in the Roman world, sworn in the name of the gods, swearing absolute obedience to the Roman state and to the commanding officers of your legion. Breaking it was not a legal infraction. It was a religious violation, a betrayal of the gods themselves, and the Roman world took this seriously in a way that the modern world has no precise equivalent for. You have sworn to obey without question, to march where you are told, to fight where you are told, to build what you are told to build, to endure what you are told to endure, to accept punishment for failure without appeal, and to do all of this for 25 years without leaving the service of the Roman army without permission, which is not granted casually. The term of service has changed over the centuries, but in the period we are discussing it is 20 years of active service followed by 5 years as a veteran. A veteran being a soldier who has served his primary term and is technically eligible for discharge, but is kept available for emergency service. 25 years total. You enlisted as a young man, which means you will be in your late 40s when you theoretically become fully free of military obligation, assuming you survive. The survival caveat is significant. The mortality rate in the Roman army was high even by ancient world standards, not primarily from battle, though battle was certainly dangerous, but from disease, from accident, from the physical attrition of sustained hard service in a range of climates and conditions. A significant number of the men who enlisted never completed their term. You have also, by enlisting, accepted that you cannot legally marry during your service. This rule was enforced with varying degrees of strictness in different periods, but in principle you have surrendered the right to a family life for the duration of your service. Your signing bonus, a small cash payment, is already spent in your imagination on things you will not have time to acquire. You are a soldier now. The training begins in the morning. You are awake before the sun. This is not a choice. The Roman military day began at first light, or before it, because the Roman military understood that the morning hours before full heat were the most productive for physical training, and that discipline began with controlling when soldiers woke. The signal that wakes you is a trumpet, the bucina, blown from the Principia, the headquarters building at the center of the camp. Its sound carries across the entire legionary fortress, which is a substantial and carefully planned structure, rectangular, ditched, with 4 gates and streets laid out on a grid, the same basic design replicated across the empire from Britain to Syria, so that any Roman soldier transferred to any post immediately knew the layout. You are in the barracks, not a private room, a contubernium, a unit of 8 men sharing a 2-room space, 1 room for sleeping, 1 for storing equipment. You know these 7 men better than you know your own family by now, or you will when you have been in service long enough. The contubernium was the basic social and practical unit of the Roman army. You marched together, camped together, ate together, fought together, and in a functional contubernium looked after each other with the practical care of people whose survival was genuinely interdependent. You are new. You do not yet know your 7 companions well enough for that interdependence to feel real. What you feel is that 7 other people are now moving quickly in a small space in the dark, and you need to move quickly too, or you will fall behind before the day has started. Your kit is specific and must be assembled in a specific order. Tunic on, belt, sandals, the caligae, the military sandal with its thick, hobnailed sole that is the signature sound of the Roman army on the march, the sound that preceded and followed Rome's expansion across the known world. Body armor, helmet, sword on the right hip, dagger on the left. Javelin. You have a precise amount of time to do this. You are already running slightly behind. Before you move, let us talk about what you are carrying. The Roman soldier's full marching load was, by the standards of any military in any period of history, extraordinary. The total weight carried by a legionary on the march, including armor, weapons, tools, food, and personal kit, has been estimated by historians at between 35 and 45 kilograms, approximately 80 to 100 pounds. You are carrying this weight across whatever terrain the march requires, in whatever weather the season produces, for distances that could reach 25 Roman miles, approximately 23 modern miles, in a single day. Let us be specific about what that weight consists of. The lorica segmentata, the articulated plate armor that is the iconic image of the Roman soldier, weighed approximately 9 kilograms on its own. The helmet, another 2 to 3. The scutum, the large rectangular shield, 4 to 6 kilograms. The gladius, the short stabbing sword that was the legionary's primary weapon, 1 kilogram. The pilum, the heavy javelin designed to bend on impact and prevent the enemy from throwing it back, approximately 2 kilograms, and you typically carried 2. Then the personal equipment, a furka, the forked pole from which you hung your kit on the march, holding a cooking pot, a saw, an entrenching tool, a pickaxe or mattock, a chain or rope, 3 days of rations, and your personal items. The Roman soldier was his own logistical unit. He carried everything he needed to live, fight, and build camp at the end of each march. Marius, the general who reformed the Roman army in the late 2nd century BC, made this load standard, and the soldiers who carried it were nicknamed Marius's mules, not as an insult, as an accurate description of the load-bearing capacity required. You are picking up your furka now. The weight settles onto your shoulder. You have 23 miles ahead of you today. You eat before you march. The Roman soldier's diet was built around grain, specifically wheat, ground into flour and made into a hard biscuit called bucellatum, or into a porridge called pulse, or baked into bread when time and facilities allowed. Grain constituted approximately 80% of the Roman soldier's caloric intake, not because the army could not source other food, but because grain was the most efficient food for the purpose. Calorie dense, durable in storage, transportable in bulk, and capable of being prepared in a range of ways depending on time and equipment available. This morning, with the march starting shortly, you eat bucellatum, the hard biscuit that Roman soldiers carried in their packs and which kept for extended periods without spoiling. It is dense, dry, and requires either a strong jaw or soaking in water or vinegar before eating to be manageable. Your teeth will adjust over time to the bucellatum. For now, you eat it carefully. With the biscuit posca, a mixture of water and vinegar that was the standard drink of the Roman soldier and which was consumed for practical as much as culinary reasons. The acidic environment of vinegar water inhibited bacterial growth in the water supply, and the combination provided some modest nutritional benefit. It tastes, to your modern palate, extremely strange, sharp and thin, and nothing like anything you normally drink. You will develop a taste for it, or you will not, and you will drink it anyway, because it is what there is. On better days, when the supply train is functioning and the legion has been stationary long enough for proper food preparation, there will be lentils, beans, hard cheese, salt pork, and occasionally fresh vegetables, if the local province provides them. The Roman army was not entirely indifferent to its soldiers' nutrition. It understood, practically, that soldiers who ate inadequately did not march well or fight well. But today, there is bucellatum and posca. The trumpet sounds again. It is time. You are marching. Understand what this means, not in the abstract, but in the body. You are moving at roughly 5 kilometers per hour. The Roman military pace, which was faster than a civilian walk and maintained with the conscious regularity of a trained force rather than the irregular rhythm of individuals moving at their own pace. You are moving at this pace for approximately 6 to 8 hours, depending on terrain and conditions, with brief halts every hour or two for rest and water. You are carrying approximately 40 kilograms. Your hobnailed sandals, the caligae, are striking the road surface with every step, and the sound of a full legion on the march, thousands of iron-studded soles on stone or packed earth, has a distinctive resonance that contemporaries described as one of the most recognizable sounds in the ancient world. The sound that meant Rome was coming. The sound that meant you were coming, as a part of the thing that made that sound. The Roman road beneath your feet, if you are fortunate enough to be marching on one, is a marvel of engineering. A cambered stone surface on a prepared foundation, designed to shed water and bear heavy loads and remained passable in weather that turned unpaved ground to mud. The Roman road network was itself a military achievement, built largely by soldiers during campaigns and serving both military and commercial purposes. The road is also hard stone under an iron-studded sandal carrying 40 kilograms means that the impact of each step is transmitted through your foot into your ankle, into your knee, into your hip, with a consistency that by hour 4 you are aware of in a way you were not aware of in hour 1. Your feet are the first thing to fail, not dramatically. Blisters forming over the first days of a march before the feet harden to the work. The specific locations that the Calagai's straps find and exploit. The army expects this. New soldiers are given time, technically, for their feet to adapt. But the march does not wait. You march. The man ahead of you sets the pace. You keep it. Here is the honest assessment of where you are physically. The Roman legionary was one of the most physically conditioned soldiers in the ancient world. Not by modern military standards, the Roman army did not have gym equipment or systematic sports science, but by the standards that sustained hard physical service produces over time. A legionary who had been in service for several years was a different physical creature from the man who had enlisted. His legs were developed by months of marching. His upper body was developed by the weapons training and the engineering work and the constant management of heavy equipment. His cardiovascular fitness was developed by everything the army required of him every day. You are not that person yet. You are a new recruit, which in the Roman army was called a tiro, and the tiro occupied a specific and not entirely enviable position in the legionary hierarchy. You were inexperienced, physically underprepared, and subject to the full demands of military service while not yet having the physical base to meet them without significant cost. The training program for new recruits, documented in the military manuals that survive from the Roman period, particularly Vegetius's late imperial treatise De Re Militari, was systematic and progressive, route marching beginning at 20 Roman miles and increasing in pace and distance, running in full armor, swimming when water was available because rivers were military obstacles and soldiers needed to be able to cross them, jumping over obstacles in full armor, wrestling, weapons training with wooden practice swords weighted heavier than the real weapon so that the real weapon felt lighter by comparison. This training program assumed several months to produce an adequately trained legionary. You are on day 1. The 23 miles of today's march is not the training program. It is what happens after the training program, when you are considered ready for active service. Today, you are not ready. You march anyway. Everyone begins here. You need to understand right now, before anything else goes wrong, what happens when things go wrong in the Roman army. The Roman military disciplinary system was not designed to be kind. It was designed to produce and maintain the kind of behavior that allowed a force of several thousand men to function as a single coordinated organism in conditions of extreme physical stress and mortal danger. The requirements were absolute, the enforcement was consistent, and the consequences of failure were calibrated to make the cost of non-compliance higher than the cost of compliance, regardless of how difficult compliance was. The basic instrument of routine discipline was the vetus, the centurion's vine staff, a rod of twisted vine wood carried by every centurion as both a symbol of authority and a functional implement of immediate punishment. Centurions used it frequently on soldiers who fell out of formation, who failed to maintain their kit, who were slow to respond to orders, who showed insufficient effort in training. This was not abuse in the Roman military understanding. It was maintenance, the same way you maintained equipment. Above the vetus, the range of formal punishments escalated through reduction in rations, reduction in pay, assignment to particularly unpleasant duties, flogging, and at the extreme end of the spectrum, Decimation, the practice of selecting by lot 1 man in 10 from a unit that had shown cowardice in battle and executing him in front of his fellow soldiers. The other 9 men were then assigned reduced rations and required to sleep outside the camp's protection as additional punishment. Decimation was rare. It did not need to be common to be effective. Everyone knew it existed. Everyone knew it had been used. The mere existence of the procedure shaped the culture of the entire force. The more immediate disciplinary reality you face today is your centurion. He has already noticed you are slightly behind. He is walking toward you. Keep up. The centurion is the most important person in your daily existence, not the legate, the commanding officer of the legion, typically a senator serving a political appointment, who may be a talented military man or may not be, but who in either case is a distant figure operating at a level of command that does not touch your daily life directly. Not even the tribune, the middle-ranking officers who serve under the legate, the centurion. The centurion commanded a century, nominally 80 men, in practice often fewer, and was responsible for every aspect of their performance, welfare, discipline, and survival. He was typically a career soldier, a man who had risen through the ranks over many years of service, who knew the army from the inside at every level, and who had been selected for his command on the basis of demonstrated ability and force of character. He was not, as a general rule, a soft man. The centurion you serve under has been in the army for 15 years. He has campaigned in 3 provinces. He has the scars that indicate a man who was at the front of whatever fighting his career involved, because centurions led from the front. The Roman tactical system placed the centurion at the right end of his century's formation, which was the position of greatest exposure. He is 40 years old and he looks 50. He knows every trick a new soldier uses to appear to be working while not working, and he has zero patience for any of them. He is also, in ways that will take you time to appreciate, genuinely responsible for you. The centurion, who ran his century poorly, who failed to maintain discipline, but also failed to look after his men's welfare, who took the bonuses available to senior soldiers without providing the protection those bonuses were supposed to buy, was not a good centurion by the Roman army's own standards. The relationship was not purely one of authority and obedience. It was mutual obligation, the soldier's service given in exchange for the centurion's competent leadership. This does not make the vine staff less real. It is currently being applied to the back of the soldier in front of you who fell out of step. You are back in step. You stay in step. The march is over. 23 miles. You are exhausted in a way you have not been exhausted before. Not the pleasant tiredness of a long run or a hard workout, but the deep, systemic exhaustion of a body that has been asked to do something beyond its current capacity for 6 hours without stopping. Your feet are a specific problem. Your shoulders, where the first are rested, are their own specific problem. Your lower back is making its presence known in a way that suggests tomorrow will be interesting. You have perhaps an hour before dark. In that hour, you will build a camp. This is not optional, and it is not metaphorical. The Roman army on the march built a fortified camp at the end of every day's march. Every day. Not a rough bivouac, a proper camp, with a ditch dug around the perimeter, the earth from the ditch thrown inward to form a rampart, stakes driven into the rampart to form a palisade, 4 gates, an internal street plan, and specific allocated spaces for every unit and function within the legion. You are digging this ditch now. The entrenching tool, the delabra, a combined pickaxe and mattock that you carried on the march, is in your hands, and you are breaking ground. The Roman military ditch was typically V-shaped, approximately 2 meters deep and 3 meters wide. You are digging a section of it. The calculation of how much digging each soldier is responsible for has been worked out and assigned. You dig your section to the specified depth and width because it will be checked, and inadequate work will be remedied at your personal expense of time and energy. You have been marching for 6 hours. You are now digging a defensive ditch. When the ditch is done, you will drive stakes into the rampart. When that is done, you will pitch your tent. This is a typical day in the Roman army that does not involve fighting. The fighting days are, in some respects, a relief from the ordinary routine. You dig. The camp is built. Your tent is up. The leather tent, the papilio, butterfly, so called for the shape it made when unfurled, housed your contubernium of 8 men in a space approximately 3 meters square. 8 men, 3 meters square. Do the arithmetic. You are sleeping closer to 7 other people than you have slept to anyone since early childhood. And you have done 6 hours of hard physical labor since this morning, and your tent mates have done the same. And the collective smell of 8 unwashed soldiers in a leather tent on a warm evening is an olfactory experience for which the modern world has not prepared you. The Roman army provided bedding, a straw-filled pallet, or more often simply a blanket laid on the ground. The ground of the camp interior, once the tent is pitched, was not the prepared surface of a barracks, but whatever the ground happened to be where the camp was built. Sometimes smooth, sometimes rocky, often damp where the ground absorbed the heat of the day and released moisture in the evening cool. You lie down on your section of the tent floor. 8 people in 3 square meters means approximately 1 square meter per person. This is your sleeping space. The man to your left is already asleep, the unconscious, total sleep of extreme exhaustion. The man to your right is cleaning his equipment, which he is doing in the tent because it is dark outside, which means the lamp is lit, which means the tent is slightly smoky in addition to its other qualities. Your equipment also needs cleaning. The gladius must be oiled. The armor must be inspected. The sandals must be checked for loosened hobnails, and the loose ones hammered back in or replaced. Equipment that was not maintained failed at the moment it was needed, and in the Roman army, equipment that failed at the moment it was needed was not a personal inconvenience. It was a tactical liability that affected the 8 men around you and the sentry around them. You clean your equipment, then you lie back down. The lamp goes out. The tent is dark and warm and smells of 8 soldiers, and you are asleep within approximately 30 seconds of your head reaching the ground. Before we continue, let us spend a moment on food, because food in the Roman army is one of the places where the reality diverges most significantly from the imagination. The Roman army was, by ancient world standards, extraordinarily well fed. This was not generosity, it was logistics. The Roman military understood the causal relationship between adequate nutrition and combat effectiveness with a clarity that many subsequent armies took centuries to replicate. A legionary who was not adequately fed was a legionary who marched more slowly, tired more quickly, healed more poorly, and fought less effectively. The army's extensive supply infrastructure, the supply trains, the provincial requisitions, the granary system, existed to prevent this. The baseline ration was approximately a kilogram of grain per day per soldier, supplemented by legumes, olive oil, salt, and vinegar. In practice, particularly during active campaigns and in provinces with good agricultural resources, the diet was considerably richer. Vegetables, fruit, cheese, fresh meat when available, wine diluted with water. The Roman wine ration was standard issue in many periods, not as a luxury, but as a caloric supplement and, like the posca, a practical alternative to water of uncertain quality. The cooking was done at the contubernium level. Your group of 8 was its own cooking unit, using the shared equipment you carried on the march. The grain was ground into flour using the small hand mills that the army carried, mixed with water and salt, and baked into flatbreads on the campfire or boiled into the pulse porridge that was the army's comfort food, the Roman equivalent of something warm and familiar after a hard day. The cooking fire in the camp is going now. Your contubernum is taking its turn. Everyone shared the cooking duties, which meant everyone needed to know how to cook the army's basic dishes, which were not complicated but required attention and experience to produce in the quantities and on the schedule the army required. The pulse tonight is thick and hot and entirely adequate. You eat it with the focused attention of someone who marched 23 miles today and built a camp afterward and has not eaten properly since the butylatum at dawn. It is excellent. You are not sleeping yet. The Roman military night was divided into 4 watches, 4 equal divisions of the hours of darkness, each lasting approximately 3 hours. Every soldier in the legion took turns on watch duty. This was not optional. It was not distributed according to seniority, and it applied to everyone. The watch schedule was posted and enforced, and falling asleep on guard duty was one of the offenses that could, in serious cases, result in death. Your watch tonight is the 3rd, the Vigilia Tertia, beginning at midnight or thereabouts and ending before dawn. This means you sleep from approximately sunset until midnight, stand watch for 3 hours, and then have the option of sleeping again for a few hours before the dawn trumpet. In practice, the interrupted sleep of a night watch schedule, combined with the physical exhaustion of a marching day, produces a quality of tiredness that is cumulative. One night is manageable. A week is difficult. A month begins to affect everything. Judgment, reaction time, physical recovery, emotional regulation. The Roman soldier was frequently operating on a chronic sleep deficit that was not considered a problem by the army because it was a universal and unavoidable condition of the service. You are awake now, walking the perimeter of the camp in the dark. The Roman military camp was not perfectly silent at night. The sounds of thousands of men sleeping, cooking fires dying, animals in the supply train, the occasional sound of the neighboring watch giving its signal. But outside the walls, the darkness is complete, and the countryside is whatever it is, familiar province or hostile territory, quiet or not. You carry your pilum and your shield. You walk the circuit. You think in the way that people on night watch always think, about things that the day is too busy to allow. Home, the person you left when you enlisted, the decision that brought you here. You complete the circuit. You begin again. The morning after the march, you train. The Roman army's weapons training program was systematic, repeated, and relentless. Vegetius describes it in detail. New recruits trained twice daily, experienced soldiers once daily, and the training covered not just weapons technique, but the specific physical conditioning that combat effectiveness required. This was not optional. It was scheduled, supervised, and its results were assessed. The weapons training began with the palus, a wooden post driven into the ground at man height, against which soldiers practiced sword strokes with weighted wooden practice swords. The weighting was intentional. A wooden sword made heavier than a real gladius meant that the real thing felt light and fast when you eventually trained with it, and the muscle development from swinging a heavier weapon prepared you for the real one. You practice against the palus now. The training sergeant, the campidoctor, watches and corrects. The gladius is a stabbing weapon primarily, not a slashing one, and the Roman technique emphasized the thrust over the cut. The thrust is faster, more controlled, and more lethal. The cut requires more space, more movement, and exposes the swordsman for longer. Every time you instinctively slash, rather than thrust, the campidoctor corrects you. The correction is physical, as well as verbal. After the gladius, the pilum. The heavy javelin was a sophisticated weapon. Its design meant that when it struck an enemy shield, the soft iron shank bent, and the javelin could not be withdrawn or thrown back, making the shield unwieldy and often forcing the enemy soldier to abandon it. Throwing the pilum accurately at a moving target from the correct distance, close enough to penetrate but far enough that the cavalry behind the enemy had not yet reached you, required practice that was not theoretical. You throw it. It goes wide. The camper doctor says something. You retrieve it and throw it again. You are not just a soldier. This is the fact about Roman military service that most surprises modern people when they learn it. The Roman legionary was also an engineer, a builder, a construction worker of considerable skill, and the construction work was not peripheral to the military mission. It was central to it. The Roman army built roads. The road network that connected the empire, the system that allowed rapid movement of troops, the supply infrastructure that kept provinces functioning, the communications network that held an empire together across thousands of miles, was built primarily by soldiers, not by civilian contractors. By legionaries on campaign and on garrison duty, using the skills and tools that were standard military equipment. The army built bridges, temporary pontoon bridges for river crossings, permanent stone bridges on stable supply routes. It built forts and fortresses. It built aqueducts. It built entire cities, in the sense that the planned settlement of a new province often began with a legionary fortress that gradually accumulated civilian infrastructure around it and became, over generations, an urban center. Today you are working on the fort's permanent structures. The barracks blocks that will replace the leather tents for garrison duty, built in the Roman military style, concrete foundations, stone or tile walls, tiled roofs. You are mixing mortar, which is physical work of a specific and demanding kind. You are carrying stone, which is heavy. You are following the specifications of the military architect, who has a plan and expects it to be executed correctly. You are not a trained builder. The army does not particularly care. It will train you as it trains you in everything, through repetition, under supervision, with correction applied when the work is inadequate. You mix mortar. The empire is built by people who were told to build it. You are building it now. You are paid. This is one of the genuine advantages of Roman military service. The legionary's base salary in the late Republic and early Empire, the stipendium, was real money, more than most of the civilian occupations available to men of the social class that typically enlisted. Julius Caesar doubled the legionary's pay, and the amount remained attractive enough that enlistment, while not always voluntary in practical terms, was also not the economic disaster it was in some later historical armies. The problem is the deductions. The Roman army deducted from your pay before you saw it. Food. The rations you consumed were not free. They were charged to your account. Equipment. The armor, the weapons, the tools were issued on account, and replacements for damaged or lost items were charged to you. Burial club, a compulsory contribution to the Collegium Fund that paid for a proper burial if you died in service, which was considered important enough that it was mandatory rather than optional. Hay for the cavalry's horses, if your unit was associated with cavalry, and in some periods, the cost of various ceremonial events. After deductions, the cash in your hand was considerably less than the salary figure suggested. Some of this came back. Donatives, cash gifts from the emperor or general at key moments, distributed to the whole army, could be substantial. Booty from successful campaigns was distributed according to rank. Veterans who completed their service received a discharge bonus, cash or a land grant, that was, in principle, enough to set up a civilian life. In principle. You are thinking about this in the way that new soldiers always think about pay. The discrepancy between what was promised and what arrived in your hand is sharper than you expected. The centurion has suggested you could supplement your income through the various informal economies of the military camp. You are not yet sure what that means. You will learn. Here is the part of Roman military service that the histories skip. Most of your service will not involve fighting. Most of it will not even involve marching. A significant portion of your 25 years will be spent in Garrison, stationed at a fort on a frontier or in a province, maintaining the Roman presence in that location and doing the work that maintenance requires. The work is training, construction, administrative duty, patrol, guard duty, and the various logistical and maintenance tasks that a military installation generates. This work is real, and it is continuous, and it is better than being idle, because idle soldiers in a garrison were a recognized problem that the Roman army addressed with structured activity precisely because the alternative, men with nothing to do for extended periods, produced the kind of behavior that caused problems. But it is not exciting. The frontier garrison in Britain, or Germany, or Syria, or Egypt, the soldier on frontier duty in a quiet period of his service, which was most of his service, spent his days maintaining the fort, training, patrolling terrain he had patrolled yesterday and would patrol tomorrow, eating the same food, sleeping in the same space, talking to the same 8 men. The Roman army understood this problem. It actively managed it. The religious calendar of military festivals gave structure to the year. The collegium, the burial club that also functioned as a social society, organized events and activities. Leave was granted, though the distance from home for most soldiers made leave less useful than it sounds. And the various informal economies of the camp, the canteen, the traders who clustered outside every military installation, the games and gambling that were officially discouraged and practically universal, filled the gaps. You have been here for 4 months. Your contubernium mates have told all their stories twice. You are beginning to learn theirs. This, it turns out, is most of what military service is. The thing most likely to kill you in the Roman army is not a barbarian spear, it is disease. The mortality statistics that survive from the ancient world are incomplete and difficult to interpret, but the pattern they suggest is consistent with what military historians have observed in armies throughout history up to the modern era. The majority of military deaths in pre-modern warfare were not battle deaths. They were disease deaths. Dysentery, typhoid, malaria, pneumonia, infected wounds, these killed more soldiers than enemy action in most campaigns of most periods. The Roman army took this seriously. The military medical system was, for the ancient world, remarkably sophisticated. Each legion had a course of medici, trained military physicians, and each major military installation had a valetudinarium, a hospital building with wards for different types of cases, ventilation designed to reduce cross-infection, a consistent supply of fresh water, and a systematic approach to wound treatment and surgical care. This system saved lives that would otherwise have been lost. Roman military surgery, documented in the medical manuals that survive, included procedures: wound debridement, amputation, trepanning, that were competently performed given the knowledge and tools available, and the outcomes, while not comparable to modern standards, were better than they would have been without systematic medical care. What the Roman medical system could not do was identify the cause of the infectious diseases that killed soldiers. Germ theory was not available. The connection between standing water and malaria was observed without its mechanism being understood. The role of contaminated water in dysentery was not fully grasped. Prevention was therefore incomplete, because you cannot systematically prevent what you cannot systematically explain. You have a fever this week. It started 2 days ago, and the medicus has seen you and prescribed rest and a specific dietary regime and the herbal preparation that Roman medicine used for fever reduction. You rest. The fever is probably going to pass. Probably. Stop for a moment and notice something. You have been in the army for several months now. The person you were when you arrived, the civilian in military clothing, the tiro who fell out of step on the first day, the man who had no idea how to mix mortar or throw a pilum or clean armor in the dark. is not quite the person you are now. Not because you have been transformed, because you have been inserted into a community with very specific demands and very specific rewards, and your body and mind have been adapting to those demands in the way that they adapt to any sustained challenge. The 7 men of your contubernium are the primary community. You know their habits now. You know which one snores and which one is actually awake when he appears to be sleeping, and which one needs 3 minutes after the trumpet before he is functional. You know who is good with the pilum and who is good with the gladius. You know who to ask for help with the equipment you still struggle with, and who to help in return with the cooking duties that do not come naturally to him. Beyond the contubernium, the sentry, 80 men, the sentry, and the centurion who commands them. You know this group less intimately, but you know it as a unit, its strengths, its tensions, the history that predates your arrival, and that you are now part of, whether you know all of it or not. Beyond the sentry, the cohort. Beyond the cohort, the legion, 5,000 men, approximately, the full complement of a Roman legion, moving and functioning as a single organism that is also made up of thousands of individual humans with individual histories and individual motivations. The Roman army's effectiveness was not primarily technological or even tactical. It was the product of this community, maintained and reinforced over years, until the unit's coherence and collective identity became a force multiplier that no individual skill could replicate. You are part of this community now. Not fully, not yet. But the process has begun. And the process, it turns out, is not entirely a bad thing. The gods are everywhere in the Roman army, not metaphorically. The religious life of the Roman legion was structured, systematic, and taken with complete seriousness. The legionary fortress had a shrine to the standards, the eagle and the unit standards of the legion, which were simultaneously military symbols and sacred objects, treated with the reverence of religious icons, because they were religious icons. Losing the eagle in battle was the gravest dishonor a legion could suffer, one that could result in the unit's disbandment. Recovering a lost eagle was a military priority, second only to the campaign's primary objective. The religious calendar of the military was specific and full. The Feriale Duranum, a calendar of military religious observances from the 3rd century AD, lists dozens of festivals, anniversaries, and sacrifices spread throughout the year, each with prescribed observances that the whole unit participated in. The birthdays of emperors, living and deified, the founding anniversary of Rome, the parade days of specific gods, the birthday of the legion itself. You participate in all of this, not as an optional spiritual practice, but as a military obligation. The army's religious life was part of its social cohesion. Shared ritual creates shared identity, and the Roman military understood this with the same clarity it understood the connection between nutrition and combat effectiveness. You have also, over the months, developed your own personal religious practices. Most soldiers did. The military camp was full of religious options. The official Roman pantheon was supplemented by the gods of whatever province you were stationed in, and by the mystery religions that spread through the army's social networks, Mithraism being the most prevalent in this period, a cult particularly popular among soldiers for its hierarchical initiation system and its theology of cosmic struggle that resonated with military values. You have not committed to Mithras yet, but you have attended 2 initiations as an observer. The rituals are impressive. The order comes. You are going to battle. After the months of training and marching and building and guard duty and boredom and adjustment, the thing the army has been preparing you for is imminent, and the information hits your body in a specific way that no amount of training quite prepares you for. The combination of adrenaline and something older, something more fundamental. The recognition that the next hours will determine in a very direct way whether you continue to exist. The Roman battle formation is the thing that your training has been building toward. You know your position in the century. You know your position relative to the men around you. You know the sequence of actions that the formation requires. The advance. The throwing of the pilum at the optimal moment, close enough to the enemy that it penetrates, but not so close that you cannot reform before contact. The drawing of the gladius, the step into contact. The Roman tactical system was built around what happened in those final meters before the lines collided. The scutum, the large rectangular shield, was used not merely as a passive defense, but as an active offensive tool. The boss slammed into the enemy to break their footing, creating the space for the gladius thrust that followed. The combination of shield punch and short stabbing thrust repeated was the fundamental tactical action of the Roman infantry engagement. You know all of this. Your hands know it from the months of practice against the Palus. Whether your hands will remember it when there is a real person on the other end of the sword, when the training scenario becomes the actual scenario, and the actual scenario has consequences that the training scenario did not, is not something any amount of training can fully guarantee. The formation advances. The sound of the two armies approaching each other across the ground between them is specific and unlike anything else. You are in the middle of it. The line makes contact. You do what you have been trained to do. You are alive. This deserves a moment before anything else. In the chaos and noise and close violence of the engagement you have just come through, the primary question is always the binary one, and you are on the right side of it. You are alive. Take stock. Your shield arm is bruised from the impacts of the engagement. The repeated use of the scutum as an offensive tool takes a physical toll that the training never quite replicates, because in training your opponent is also trained and expecting it. Your sword hand is cut, not deeply, a deflection from something you did not completely block, and the medicus will look at it when there is time, which is not now. You are exhausted in a specific post-combat way that is different from the exhaustion of the march or the work. The adrenaline of the engagement is metabolizing now, and the metabolic debt of several hours of intense physical and psychological stress is becoming apparent in your limbs and your concentration. Your hands are not entirely steady. Around you, the work after the battle is beginning. The Roman army's post-engagement procedures were as systematic as everything else. The wounded collected, the dead counted, the prisoners secured, the field stripped of usable equipment, the area assessed for the next tactical phase. The army did not stop because the fighting was over. It continued because the fighting being over created its own set of tasks. You are assigned to prisoner handling. The prisoners are men who were fighting you an hour ago. They are now, legally and practically, the property of Rome. To be sold into slavery, ransomed if they are of sufficient rank, or executed if they are not useful in either of those capacities. The Roman army did not typically take prisoners for humanitarian reasons. It took them for economic ones. You do your assigned work. The battle is over. There will be another one. Let us step back from the daily detail and look at the larger shape of the thing you have committed to. 25 years. You enlisted young, 18, 19, 20 perhaps. You will be in your early to mid-40s when the army is done with you, assuming you survive. The army will have taken your 20s, your 30s, your early 40s. The decades in which, in civilian life, you might have married and had children and built a trade and accumulated the domestic life that the Roman world considered the normal arc of a male existence. The Roman army was aware of this. It was not indifferent to it. The discharge bonus, the premier militia, cash or land, was intended to provide a foundation for the civilian life that service had deferred. Veterans received social privileges, exemption from certain taxes, preference in legal proceedings, the respect that Roman society gave to men who had served. Some veterans received land in the new colonies that Roman expansion created, plots in a recently conquered province where a man who knew how to build and work hard and manage difficult conditions, qualities that military service had thoroughly instilled, could make something. Some did. The veteran communities that grew up around former military installations became, in several cases, the nuclei of permanent towns. But the 25 years is not abstract. It is your 30s. It is the decade when your parents aged and you were not there. It is the children you did not legally have, or had informally and could not officially acknowledge. You are thinking about this in the second year of your service, which means you have 23 years remaining. 23 years. The calculation is sobering. The men who have been in service 10, 15 years have stopped making this calculation. They have reached the point where the army is home and the civilian world is theoretical and the calculation is no longer useful. You wonder if you will reach that point. You suspect you will. Step back further still. You are one man in a legion of 5,000. Your legion is one of 25 to 30 legions that the Roman army maintained during the early empire. The legions are the heavy infantry corps of a force that also includes auxiliary units, provincial troops recruited from across the empire, fighting in their own traditional styles, cavalry, archers, slingers, engineers, bringing the total Roman military force to perhaps 300,000 men at the height of the empire. 300,000 men maintained in a state of constant readiness, fed and armed and housed and trained and paid across a territory that stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. The logistics required to sustain this are difficult to comprehend in their full scale. The grain supply alone, the minimum daily ration for 300,000 soldiers, plus their officers, plus the support personnel, plus the cavalry horses, required the agricultural output of vast territories, organized into a supply system of extraordinary complexity. The Roman army's administrative infrastructure, the record-keeping, the pay records, the supply tracking, the correspondence between units and commands, produced documents that archaeologists are still finding and translating. And the machine worked for centuries, with the reliability of a well-maintained piece of engineering, which is what it was. A piece of social and organizational engineering refined over generations to produce a specific output, which was the sustained military dominance of an enormous territory. You are part of this machine, a single component, replaceable, not individually essential to the machine's function, but part of the aggregate that makes the function possible. The machine does not care about you individually. It cares about your output, your march rate, your pylon throw, your ditch depth, your watch quality. And yet, the machine made you something. The training, the discipline, the community of your contubernum, these shaped you. The person who walks out of the army after 25 years is not the person who walked in. He is harder, more capable, more self-sufficient, more patient, more aware of what he can endure. He is also often damaged in ways that the army does not account for, and the Roman world has no vocabulary for. He is you, in 23 more years. You hope he is all right. 25 years later. You are 43 years old, or 45, depending on how the service worked out. Your hair is grey at the temples. Your knees give you a specific problem in cold weather that the medicus in your last garrison called the consequence of too many years of marching, and that you have learned to manage rather than cure. Your right ear does not work as well as it once did, the consequence of too many years in the noise of training and the one engagement where you were too close to something very loud. You are standing in the parade ground of your last posting for a ceremony that you have watched other men receive over the years and that you are receiving now. The onesta missio. The honorable discharge. Your commanding officer reads out your record. The scribe records your discharge. You receive a bronze diploma, 2 plates of bronze recording your service and your rights as a veteran, and a leather bag containing the Premier Militia, your discharge bonus in coin. You walk out of the gate. For the first time in 25 years, no trumpet tells you when to wake. No centurion watches your work. No formation waits for you. The road ahead goes in any direction you choose. You stand there for a moment. The freedom is real. It is also, after 25 years, somewhat difficult to know what to do with. Many veterans settled near the fort where they had served, and the civilian settlements that grew up around military installations had many people you knew, the families of former comrades, the traders and craftsmen whose lives were woven through the armies. Some enlisted sons or nephews, passing the military life to the next generation. Some used their accumulated savings and their land grant to establish farms. Some found the civilian world bewildering after 2.5 decades of total institutional structure and spent years finding their footing in it. You are not sure which one you will be. You start walking. The road is good. A Roman road, stone paved, well maintained. You built roads like this. Your hobnailed boots ring on the stone. The sound they have made for 25 years. The sound that announced Rome to the world. One last time, you march. You are back in your modern bed. Take a moment to acknowledge the distance between where you are and what we have just walked through together. The Roman legionary marched 23 miles a day, carrying 40 kilograms. He built his own shelter every night. He maintained his own equipment. He trained twice daily. He stood watch for 3 hours in the middle of the night. He built roads and forts and aqueducts with the same hands he trained to kill with. He did all of this for 25 years, in climates ranging from the Scottish Highlands to the Syrian desert, under a disciplinary system of absolute obedience backed by the threat of physical punishment and, at the extreme end, execution. And he did it well enough that the organization he was part of held together one of the largest and most enduring political structures in human history. You would not last the first week. Not because you are weak. You are not weak. Because the Roman legionary was not an ordinary person performing extraordinary duties. He was an ordinary person who had been subjected to a systematic, years-long process of physical and psychological conditioning that produced a specific kind of human being, one capable of the things the Roman army required. That conditioning did not exist in you before you arrived, and one day or 1 week would not be sufficient to create it. The Tiro who arrived on the first day and the legionary who walked out after 25 years were, in meaningful ways, different people. The army made something. Whether that something was worth what it cost is a question the Roman world debated, and that we can debate too. The army was also a machine of conquest, of slavery, of systematic violence, applied to peoples who had not asked to be Roman and were given very limited options about becoming so. The roads it built are still there. The forts it built became cities. The law it carried with it is the ancestor of the legal systems most of the Western world still uses. The men who built all of that spent 25 years sleeping in leather tents, marching on stone roads, eating grain and vinegar, carrying 40 kilograms, and being corrected with a vine staff when they fell out of step. You are warm. You are fed. You are comfortable in a way that would have been incomprehensible to the man whose life we just lived. The empire that made the modern world was built by people who had none of what you have. Close your eyes. You have earned your rest in ways you did not know before tonight. Sleep.